Hello, I'm Steph from iDrive Classic. We're back for a new year, new overalls, and best of all, a new project. Because if you joined us last year, you'll know that we were working on Tina the Marina, and things are a little bit checkered on that, but I think I might talk to you about that later on. But anyway, with it being a new year and having a small amount of disposable income, we thought, right, what on earth can we do to waste money and time next? And Kev's had this really cracking MGC project sitting in his garage. And this has been here now for, and I'm sure many of us are guilty of this, far too long without any progress. And so I was really cajoling Kev last year and I said, we need to do something with it, we need to get it going. And I made him promise his New Year's resolution was we were going to get this MGC turned around from being, in my opinion, quite a solid shell into an actual working car. But I've just walked in and I'm going to show you where I found Kev, and we'll get him to talk about what he's doing because he's working on another MG today and it's not the MGC where he should be.
Hi, Happy New Year to one and all. 2024 is going to be a fantastic year apparently, so they tell me. So, first project of the year is the MGB. I've owned this MGB for about 9 years now, done quite a lot of work to it. When I bought it, it had a reconditioned engine fitted to it, and that was 17,000 miles ago. Now I noticed a bit of a rap when it started and no oil pressure, which was a little bit disconcerting to say the least. So I've changed the oil probably about 6 times since I've owned the car, so the oil's been changed every 1,000 miles or so. But I thought I'm going to have to investigate this even further. So up on ramps, and I've pulled the sump off, which is quite an involved job because you've got to drop the front subframe down on the car. As you can see, it's actually off the axle stands now and jacked up. So I've taken the subframe off. Saw that the oil pump was the original oil pump, and so I thought I'll just have a look at it, look at the bearings. And to my absolute shame, I was greeted with this, which is the big end bearing, and as you can see, it's right down to the copper. Now, and it was only on the top, at the bottom of the conrod, and not on the cap, so goodness knows. But the main bearings were in good condition, so I really don't know what's gone wrong there. I'm just hoping that it's the oil pump. So I've put another oil pump in it and a new set of 10 thou undershells. The crank, I've had a good look at the crank. The crank looks okay at this stage, so I'm just going to take a chance with this and see what happens. And obviously if it does start rattling again, I'll have to pull the engine out and have the crank ground properly. So that's this one. So now I want to show you the highlight of my year, possibly the next project that's been hanging around in here for far too long.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to ask you at home, Kev, with such a beautiful MGB on the left-hand side of the garage, why have we got this on the right-hand side?
That's a very, 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 very incredibly valid point. and I'm sure my wife asked the same question. Basically, the MGs, but particularly the MGCs, I've been involved with since, how old are you?
Well, it's funny you should ask that because the day that this video goes out is my 36th birthday.
Never.
All right, you don't need to make me feel like a fossil, thanks.
30, so that, what, 88?
88, yeah.
Wow, well, 1988, I started working for a chap that restored MGs as some of you older people will remember, a YTS, which was part of the youth training scheme. Oh God, that sounds old. £27.30. Oh no, I got more because I was in my second year. I was in my third and final year. But basically the MGC, I always liked this bulge on the front, and I just like the presence of the whole car because it looked so menacing. It looked like, I mean, I'm not being sexist, but it looked like a real man's car. And basically, I certainly can't afford an Aston Martin, I can't afford a Jensen Interceptor and I can't afford an E-Type. But to me, the MGC, an Austin Healey, I can't afford an Austin Healey neither. But this to me is the epitome of a muscle car for the working man, I suppose, really.
It is a blooming nice car. I think one of my big questions for you is, and I think will be a question as well, is, and we're going to come on to this in a little bit, is when you looked at this, how did you know it was a good car? And in fact, do you know what we should do? Should we clip over and we'll start looking around the car while we chat? But how did you know that this was the one and this was a good one?
Well, basically, I found out about this car. I went to Newark Auto Jumble, which I've been going for since 1993. You were 5 when I first started. Oh, God almighty, I'm old. And there was a chap there that had a Blaze MGB Roadster that was for sale. And I went to have a look at it. I mean, I wasn't particularly interested in the Roadster, but I saw he had like a little notice board and it said MGC unfinished project for sale. And I looked at it and I thought, this looks interesting. And I was talking to the guy. The guy was, is an ex-nurse. And basically, he'd bought this MGC to restore it because he's always wanted one. A bit similar story to me, really. In fact, me having more money than me and a pension. But unfortunately, he had a heart attack halfway through, so he couldn't go any further with the project, and it was a little bit sad, really, because it wasn't a car that he got fed up of, but he just realised that he wasn't going to finish the project.
And that's the most tragic when things like that happen.
Well, it is tragic, but the thing is, the guy's still with us. He's not dead.
But it's awful handing over a project when you don't.
Well,
you probably didn't want to hand over the project.
No, he didn't. But I mean, there is a point that he was even older than me. So there is.
Blimey.
I know. So there is a point where you realise that even when you do get the damn thing finished, the steering's heavy. They don't drive like you imagine them in your 20s. Because whenever I get behind the wheel of an MG, all of a sudden I'm a man in my 20s.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I've got grey hair, black hair. So that's basically it. And I went to look at it, and I really like the guy. The guy's a lovely guy. In fact, I've been in contact with him this week to tell him about the car,
and great.
And he's really excited that the car's getting done and obviously being videoed. Good.
I'm going to ask you, Kevin, this is going to be a bit of a question that I don't think you're going to want to answer. How many hours do you think are in this?
Oh, well, basically...
I want a short answer.
well, the short answer is it's as many hours as it takes.
What do you think at a rough guess? If you were looking at this for a client, what would you say?
Well, I wouldn't do it for a client, to be perfectly frank. But I reckon probably at least 250 hours to 500.
Okay.
But then again, I'm not exactly that quick to be honest anymore.
So I think the way we should approach this is we're working together on this, aren't we?
Yes.
You're letting me come along and learn, which is really kind of you, because as I understand it, this is the one classic that you said you're going to keep at the end, because I feel like everything else seems to rotate and disappear after a few years. And you've said this is the one you want to keep.
I mean, to be perfectly frank with you, I've wanted one of these since 1988, and then I was still a teenager. But the trouble is, I've wanted one, and the car has always been out of my reach, and I've never quite been able to afford one. So I mean, I couldn't afford to buy one that's already restored, and to be honest, I would not want to put so much money into an old car. So the only way that I can do it is to build one up to my specifications, what I want, etc. So it'll be a lovely project to do it, and I'll probably, if I'm honest, I'll probably enjoy the rebuilding of it, the sourcing of parts, more than actually when it's done.
Well, I know that one of the questions is going to be, Kev, look at this car, you are going to need some spares. what on earth have you got and what on earth do you need? And I think in the next video we're going to run through what we need, and we're also going to run through what we've got, because I know that you've got some of it. But a lot of people have asked us, and they asked me when we were doing the Marina actually, where we got bits from. And one of the trusted suppliers that we both use actually is MGOC Spares.
Yes.
I've used them on the Triumph, I've used them on the Morris Minor, on the Marina. And so for me, they're a dependable source. And so when they came to us, so I was having a chat with Chris from MGOC Spares, who watches the channel. So if you're watching, Chris, hi. And Chris said to me, Steph, we'd love to come on board and support you with the MGC rebuild. And not just from a parts perspective, but also from an advice perspective as well, which I think for both of us, even though I know you've been doing this since I wasn't born, blah, blah, but it's important that we get up-to-date information and we get up-to-date expert help. And that's been offered to us. And I think that's an absolute godsend.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's going to make the build a lot easier. So realistically, this is how you see it. This is where we are. It is going to be an absolute labour of love. Do we think the car's going to be worth what's been spent on it by the end? That's always a question that people ask, and it's so tacky.
Well, to be honest, I'm not really bothered, because I've always wanted one of these. So to me, the price is irrelevant, really. I mean, I'm not really bothered what it costs, to be honest, because I just want it. I just want something for me to keep, to pass down to my son, or give it to you if you bump me off.
I thought I was down to inherit the Hillman.
Yeah, you can have that.
Poor Hillman.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's a good car, that. My daily driver. Good car. So basically, I just want it right, so I'm prepared to spend on it. To be honest, I bought it right, and you know, because obviously it needs so much work doing to it. But I'm just grateful of any help, because even though there's no such thing as an expert, that is for sure. I mean, I've worked on these for years, but you know, a lot of little intricacies that are different to the MGB.
Yeah.
I do have a friend that has an MGC just over the tops, so what I'll probably do is go over and take pictures of all the engine bay and all bracketry and stuff, because all I've got is basically a rolling shell, an engine, a gearbox that's actually in the car, not fastened to it, but in the driver's floor well, and 2 boxes of bits.
And so the rest, we're going to pick through, we're going to speak to MGOC Spares, get bits from them. We'll just see how we go. So I guess in this series, we've ended up rambling. We love having a little ramble, don't we?
Yeah.
In this series, you're going to get us together, and you're going to see us get this MGC from a bare shell into a finished car. And what we're going to end the series with is a drive in the car as well. And hopefully we'll get it out to a few shows. Now that's it from us today. The light's fading, otherwise I think we'd probably ramble for even longer. But we hope you've enjoyed this very brief introduction. We've kind of given you an insight into what you're going to be seeing, and it's going to be completely honest, just like the Marina build as well. And I think that's important to say. And if we come a cropper against things, if things don't work out right, and we're going to show people how to do stuff. I'm back at work now, so unfortunately I'm going to be dipping in and out and coming to see you weekly. So each week we'll have a recap, we'll tell people what you've been up to, and then we'll show people that week a key skill. And we'll learn something that week, even if it's just reassembling something or doing something simple. So it's going to be like, do you remember in the 90s you used to be able to buy those, do you remember those series of like magazines where you could, by the end, build a ship or build a tank?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be like this with the MGOC. Yeah. We're going to be...
This will be about the same price. They were very expensive.
This is like the good first episode where you get the shell and you think there's not much involved, but there's going to be quite a bit. But yeah, I hope you really enjoy it. I'm really excited to show you it. I know that I still need to talk to you about the Marina and show you that. The blooming clutch went again, didn't it? So we need to sort that. You'll see a video on that coming as well. It just never stops, does it? Why on earth didn't I just get a normal hobby like stamp collecting or going to football or something? It probably would have cost less. But anyway, let's crack on.
Yeah.
And until next time, take care and drive safely.